And this is what we're building today. We've got a Sumo Robot, and with a proper armor enclosure around it, built separately, we got an Antweight Combat Robot arena. Welcome everyone, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield and Team Rocket Robotics. Here's my Antweight I've been building on and off for a few months now. And this guy here is going to be used for two purposes. One, as a standalone Sumo Robot arena, and then when it ends up inside of my armored box over there, you'll see that in a moment, it can be used as an elevated platform for fighting actual full combat robot Antweights. So there is another step if you want to use this with combat robotics. Don't yell at me, internet. You'll see it in a minute. Let's get started. The exact measurements for an arena like this don't really matter. It's kind of up to you. For me, you can see here I got to measure the combat robot armored box this thing's going to go in. And after taking the dimensions of the box, I'm looking at basically 46 inches per side of this arena. So converting those measurements to the actual cut lengths is not really that hard. Just be sure to factor in the width of your boards. In my case, I built the outside walls from 1x8s, and those are 3/4 of an inch thick. This leaves two boards which are 46 inches and two that are 44.5 inches long. Let's take these guys over to my miter saw and get them cut down to length. Each wall, as you can see here, is going to have a groove to help support the floor. So I've got to do some math to figure out exactly where that groove has to go on each piece. Now the exact placement of the groove is going to depend on the floor height, as well as in a moment you'll see here the size of the base of my trim router I'm going to be using to cut the groove. With the math done, I'm taking my cordless trim router here with a 3/4 inch straight bit in it, and I'm cutting the groove using a nice clean straight edge, in this case a level, as a guide for the router. And then always test things out as the build is progressing. You don't want any surprises later on. Right now, I'm going ahead and just laying out the 4 pieces to make sure they're the proper length and that the groove got cut at the proper height on each of the boards. So let's talk about pits for a moment. This arena not only going to be used, as I mentioned, for Sumo Robots, where the object is to push your opponent out of the arena, but also it's probably going to be used in situations where there's not going to be a judge for the combat robot event. So I want to make sure there's a guaranteed way to take your opponent out. And in this case, I've got a pit on either side of the arena. That may be a bit generous, but I can always change that later on. First, I'm figuring out the math of the placement of the pits. Then I'm using my jigsaw to cut out the pits and the walls where they should be. So let's talk about angled corner brackets. Each corner is going to have a steel angled plate like this, and that not only holds the arena all together, but it also gives the wood structure some protection from active weapons on Antweights. So apparently a jigsaw with a proper metal cutting blade actually works pretty good cutting through 1/8 inch steel. You get nice clean cuts with it, so that's what I did here. And then now I gotta drill a lot of holes. There's 6 holes in each of the angle brackets, and I wanted to try to get them in about the right spot on each bracket. You know, it's steel and that's a little shaky. But what I did do is I ended up using a 3D printed template that I created so I could mark each of the holes correctly using my center hole punch. And then in theory, with the drill press, they'll be about in the right spot. I say in theory because, you know, it never works quite like that. But yeah, then I gotta drill a lot of holes. And I mean, this takes a while. This really does. Assembly begins by attaching the corner brackets here to the shorter of the 2 walls. And then from there, I can use some clamps to hold things together and get the 3rd wall in place. And it's at this point I decided to reduce the chances of Antweights throwing themselves out of the arena, at least a little bit anyways. I went ahead and I extended the height of the walls using these sheets of 1/8 inch polycarbonate. These are actually the old kick plates from the Motor City Massacre arenas. So it's kind of fun to bring a little bit of old school Michigan combat robotics into the new arena. I've now got 3 of the walls in place, and therefore I can start working on the floor. When it comes to figuring out the measurements of the floor, be sure to factor in the depth of the grooves you cut a little bit ago. So the floor is going to be a little bit bigger than the interior size of the arena. And in my case, I used some 3/4 inch sheets of plywood, which I got a while ago because, you know, these things are now like gold. After cutting down the sizes of these 2 boards, I joined them together with a few pieces of scrap wood, kind of screwed some screws in it to hold things in place. It kind of works, but I think later on in the future I will improve that. but that's going to be another video. So hit subscribe, and also if you like these kind of things, hit that like button so I know to make more of these kind of build log videos of random robotic combat things. With the two halves of the floor more or less together, I could slide them in the grooves to have the walls supported, and the reality was in the middle here the floor was not all that well supported. Now conveniently, by dumb luck, the base of the floor, the bottom of the floorboards, was 2.5 inches off the ground, which is the exact size of 1x3s, which by even more crazy dumb luck, I have some extra ones of those because I built a gaming table about 10 years ago on the Tabletop Battlefield that used 1x3s. Talk about crazy random occurrences, but that's where that wood came from, in case you're curious, for that people who've been around that long. Anyway, I could slide those boards underneath the floorboard. Now it gives us some pretty good support, definitely plenty for the small robots that will be fighting in this arena. And then, of course, I did forget to cut down the other dimension of the arena. Oops, let's do that right now. All right, so we're moving on to final assembly of the arena. I have the 3 walls in place and the floor in place. So let's get the 4th wall attached. That's just more drilling some holes for the brackets and running some bolts through there. Then I'm going to go ahead and measure and cut out the various kick plates. I've got some 3/16 inch steel plates for the kick plates. That's, well, probably way overkill for, Antweights, but it'll work plenty good. It's just I got it cheap from a discount section of the local metal supplier, so that's why I went with that particular size. Hopefully it's not going to be too heavy to lug things around. I think it'll be all right. But then I also need to cut out some more of these polycarbonate elevated walls. And you'll notice here I'm cutting out a small notch in the corner of them. That's very intentional. So what that is going to do is that means this polycarbonate wall right here is not attached to these 3 bolts that go through the corner bracket. So therefore I'm going to be able to separate essentially each of the 4 walls completely separate from each other, but still leave them fully assembled. Therefore the kick plates and the polycarbonate walls will all be in place, and I can just very quickly stack them up, move them to where they need to go, and then when I get to that location, I can then assemble them together simply by inserting these 3 bolts in each of the 4 corners, and it's going to make assembly a lot faster than if I had to attach all the kick plates and all the polycarbonate walls, all that stuff every time the arena needed to be assembled and disassembled. And well, there you go. That pretty much brings us to the end of the build process for this Sumo Robot arena. And like I said, if you wanted to actually build some sort of armored container around it to fight full combat robots for Antweights, you could do that. However, I'll be honest with you, I probably won't be showing you how to do that because that's kind of goes beyond my pay grade in this channel. I'm kind of figuring out as I go over here with what's left over from the Motor City Massacre arena. Other people are more qualified at that, and you can probably find some plans and some other videos out there. I know Seth Schaefer from Team Bloodsport, as well as he builds the little 3-pound robot division. A while back, he did a video on building an armored test box for beetle weights, which might be a little bit more what you're looking for, but I'll leave that up to you to make the decision. I'll put a link to that video in the show notes. But I do have some more improvements I want to do to this particular arena after the first build of it. Plus, like I said, I need to get it inside the robot box. I just keep pointing to over there, and there's still some more work to do on that box. There probably will be a second series in this, and what I actually do to get this thing ready for combat with Antweights, because I want to be doing that here pretty shortly. So, once again, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to see that video, it's going to be coming up probably in a few weeks or ish, whenever I get around to it. But until then, once again, I'm Jason, the creator of Team Rocket Robotics, as well as the Tabletop Battlefield. Thank you guys all for watching, and have a great week.